Welcome to Thought to Action, London Center for Policy Research, where we delve deeply into important issues, examine ideas, discuss solutions, and put thoughts into action. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, the president of the London Center for Policy Research. If you enjoy our videos and content, please like, share, subscribe, be sure and comment. Join our Patreon at Patreon Thought to Action. You'll be able to preview our videos early and engage with us in question and answer sessions. Also, Thought to Action is on YouTube and Twitter and everything else. Follow us across social media. Today, we are doing a special Thought to Action on a key and critical issue that relates to the rights of individuals, of women, of frankly, children. And that's the issue of FGM, female genital mutilation, and the idea that while a lot of us think it happens in faraway places, not so. And so I'm honored to have join me today to talk about this in his upcoming bill, Congressman Scott Perry, Brigadier General retired Scott Perry. Congressman, it's an honor to speak to you about this. Thank you for being on Thought to Action from this issue.
Well, Tony, thanks so much for this opportunity. And thank you for your center's interest and involvement and getting the word out. And like you said, this is not only an issue that I've been working on, but the London Center's been keen on this as well. And today we're proud to announce that we're reintroducing the Empower Our Girls Act, and it just builds on much of the previous work that I have and others have done regarding female genital mutilation and combating FGM, right, not only around the world, but in the United States. And just like you so presciently said, many people, even if they've heard of it, and a lot of people haven't heard of it, and of course it seems, and it is horrifically barbaric, but they think it only happens far away, and they're appalled to know that it happens right here in the United States. There are practitioners, there are families that subjugate and subject their little girls, family members, mothers that actually have this performed on their little girls, and you think about the betrayal of a little girl. I'm a proud father. Me and my wife are proud parents to two little girls, and your children trust you implicitly, and that you would take them and either perform this on them yourself or have someone else perform this horrific, barbaric act oftentimes without proper medical. There's no surgical, as the UN says, there is no surgical reason to do this. There is no clinical reason to do any of this, often without anesthesia. This is literally something from another world, and it has religious connotations, often it has cultural connotations, and we want to make sure it doesn't get a foothold here in the United States, and we want to stamp it out across the globe. So in kind of, keeping with Saturday, with February 6th, which is the International Day of Zero Tolerance of FGM, we're going to reintroduce this. We're going to continue the great work that we've already done. This has been bipartisan work, and sometimes you don't always get your name on the bill, but but you have to be gratified that other people have recognized your efforts. And look, imitation is the highest form of flattery, as long as it completes the mission of ending this horrific practice. That is what we're for.
So yeah, let's break this down a little bit for our audience to better understand. As much as we have fought the London Center against what we call political or militant Islam, these sorts of practices feed into this continued culture within Islam that is very radical, very extreme, and simply put, Scott, this is about defending those who are most unable to defend themselves, which are children. Right. And in the case of militant Islam, there's this desire to treat women like chattel. And this is another thing that clearly is an outgrowth of this, the idea that a female child can be treated as property. And this goes against every fiber of every American and the very essence of our Constitution regarding co-equal and universal protection. So that's the first thing I'd like to emphasize. And that is something clearly we all, as Americans who are concerned about the benefits of freedom to all the world of having to show a good example, we got to fix our own example here at home.
Yes.
And the fact is, we still have places, strongholds, certain cities, certain communities, which still find this acceptable within the confines of in the United States, and that's just not right. I mean, that's part of what your bill is going to address, right? Is the domestic issue of this horrific practice.
Well, that's absolutely right. And there was an incident of it which occurred. It finally ended up in the courts a couple years ago, and the judge threw it out. And so we sought a remedy. We sought it's against the law, right? It was federally protected against the law, but the judge threw it out. And I understand the constitutional grounds by which the judge threw it out, but it doesn't mean that the practice should be allowed. So we went right after that and said it needs to be against the law, clean that up. And we're able to help inform that conversation, and that policy did get passed and was signed by President Trump.
I got a text.
But even at that, the circumstance still happened. Traveling across state lines with little girls to have this performed, this horrific practice. And so in the process of this, we visited many states because while law enforcement is, as you know, Tony, is generally a local and a state issue, we feel that because it's trafficked across state lines and oftentimes internationally, there's a practice called vacation cutting, where families in the United States will take their little girls at the time in their life where they find it appropriate culturally or religiously abroad to where it's more normally practiced, and have that done over summer vacation. They'll tell the girls they're going on vacation and then perform this horrific barbaric act. So literally we sought to end that. And of course we were able to do that. But I will tell you, one of the things that I struggled with, because I went to my own state of Pennsylvania and we traveled to other states to end this practice in the states, because again, law enforcement is often a local or state issue. And the folks would say in the legislature, well, look, we already have laws against assault, and this could be characterized as assault. But oftentimes, because it's cultural and religious, it's not viewed as assault. And so it needs to be particular about this, or people would say it's similar to circumcision in males. It's not anything close to the same thing, as you know, Tony. Yeah. So one of the things that frustrated me is that law enforcement agencies would say, why do we need this law? There's no evidence of it happening. There's no evidence because there's no requirement to report. So doctors, even though they might see it in a little girl who would come in, either after the practice had been performed on her or later in life, there was no requirement to report. And of course, they didn't want to stigmatize the girl or what, there was rationale for it. But from a law enforcement perspective, there's a need to know where this is occurring, how much of this is occurring. So the For Our Girls Act, one of the things it does is requires it to be added into the FBI's reporting list so we can track the occurrences of these things, so we can get to where it's happening and who's doing it. That's just one of the components of this. Right.
Well, it's critical. I mean, if you're not going to observe something if there's no ability to actually observe it, and clearly there are cultural taboos within these communities who practice this. Well, they don't want the attention because they don't want to have to be drawn into following the law. So I think that's a great add or requirement to the federal criminal register of things that must be reported. So let me ask you two follow-up questions, and we'll wrap this up. First, do you anticipate any pushback from anybody within the House of leadership or the Senate leadership on this? Because to me, it's common sense. And secondly, how quickly do you think that this can be given some teeth? That is to say that so many laws are put out there, but Scott, you and I both know, unless there's an enforcement mechanism, it won't do much good. So do you see this being able to be supported by leadership? And do you see that an enforcement mechanism that's going to be available to make sure this gets out there and happens very quickly?
Well, Tony, I will tell you, this seems like you said common sense. And the other thing this does is there's a thing called the Violence Against Women Act, and there are grants associated with this, but it explicitly excludes FGM. So the woman would also, or the young girl would also have to suffer some other crime to be able to avail herself to the VAWA grants under for FGM, which seems horrific. It's punishment upon the tragedy that's already occurred. Unfortunately, we have offered this in the past, and there has been pushback for it. I don't really understand that, but hopefully this will be an easier conversation this time. More people are more comfortable discussing it. It's a difficult subject to discuss, but to understand what's happening here, and we don't want to re-victimize, especially little girls that have had to endure this. And Tony, as you know, this goes much beyond the physical, the horrifying situation physically, the emotional and mental distress that lasts the rest of the lady's life, the potential problems with childbirth, and so on and so forth. So this has far-reaching effects. So we're hopeful that it won't have as much pushback as it's had in the past. And this is actually this bill puts teeth in it. This connects the funding for victims that should be connected with them. So specifically, that's what this bill does. Not only requires FBI to track the occurrences and the perpetrators, but then to let victims avail themselves of what the federal government has already decided should be available to victims of this type of violent activity. So hopefully this is something that Democrats and Republicans in a much divided country and a much divided Congress can agree on.
Excellent. No, and I look, we've sponsored in the past Aya Hersey Alley,
Yes.
in New York, where she's spoken about the horrific effects on her in her life. Yes. Of having this happen to her. As a matter of fact, we may want to have a session. I'll reach out to her and see if maybe we can talk more about this once you drop.
Yes, she writes extensively about it in her book Infidel. There's local heroes like Ayan Hersey Ali, F.A. Cole, who lives locally in this region, in Washington, D.C. region, is a great advocate for it and is very open about it. People need to know this is happening. Again, 500,000 girls in the United States this year. Millions of girls worldwide, but in the United States, right where you live, could be right outside, could be in your community. It's happening right here in America. Americans need to know about this.
So, Congressman, thank you. We've been talking today about the Empower Our Girls Act. Congressman is going to be dropping that very soon. We, as the think tank community, as Americans, need to be behind this. So, Congressman, thank you for joining us today on this issue. Please let me know what we can do next to help on this, because clearly I'd like to maintain the dialogue. I'm going to reach out to some of the folks I think may help us, and we'll work with you to help make sure that we continue to draw critical and constant attention as you push this through to make it into law.
Well, the great Tony Shaffer, thank you and the London Center for for this opportunity and your advocacy to help these little girls. We sure appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for watching and listening to Thought to Action. If you like this program and would like to help us expand and create more content, please join our Patreon community. Like us, subscribe, tell your friends. Also subscribe to Thought to Action channels on YouTube and on Twitter and on Facebook. So thank you for joining me today. Again, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, the president of the London Center for Policy Research. We've been joined by Congressman Scott Perry, and we'll be back in the very near future to talk more about this critical issue. Thank you for joining us.